You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with creator and host, Nomad. With 20 plus years of experience in the music industry, Nomad has done just about everything to earn a living as a career musician. From being music director to celebrity artists, playing iconic arenas and stadiums, composing for film and TV, and even playing your average local club gigs, he's done it all. Nomad's mission is to empower musicians across the globe with strategies for a sustainable career while blasting stereotypes, and to bring you tried and true wisdom from his colleagues in this crazy business we call music.
Welcome to the Career Musician Podcast. Today, I am talking with Kevin Chokan, fellow guitar-slinging career musician buddy, and he has been with Jeffrey Osborne, the R&B pop legend, for umpteen years, holding it down. Trust me, this man is super funky, and with credits that read George Duke, Howard Hewitt, Stephanie Mills, Al Jarreau, Philip Bailey, George Howard, and the list goes on. Kevin tells us what it really takes to be a career musician out here in LA for the long haul.
And today we are here at Show Can Do Inc. Brick and Mortar Studios, because usually I say we're at Nomad's place, Brick and Mortar. That's my studio, Nomad's place.
I know because of your
so here we are, Show Can Do Inc. Studios, and let me tell you, it is a sight to behold. I'm going to post the pictures. I love it.
Thank you, boss.
Kevin Chokan is my brother from another mother, as he was saying.
Absolutely.
And we are two funketeers.
Yes.
That just
with
can't
deep
be helped.
history.
With deep history, yes.
Yes.
So Kevin is an amazing guitar player, musician, all around musical being, but even more.
And you as well. Let's get that in there. Come on, man.
Hey,
let's be honest.
Inquiring minds stick together. So, well, I love.
And I mean that.
Yeah, of course, dude. No, and same here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be hanging. So,
yeah, of course. Come on. This has been a long time coming, so I'm glad.
It has. It has, man. So I hope to get nothing out of this other than sharing knowledge with people.
That's a great concept.
That's what it's about. You know?
I think it might be important to officially note that that's an important thing that I think you and I always grew up with. It seems nowadays sometimes you have to find that concept. And so hearing you say that is that's fabulous. Yeah, that's
yeah. It's like everything is relationship based, right?
Yes, sir.
And nowadays with YouTube, like we were just talking, you can learn anything. Mm-hmm. And all the studies that show we don't use the full capacity of our brain. So, in other words, if you want to learn how to be a gourmet chef, you can. If you want to learn how to study know law, you can.
I fixed my car.
If you want to learn how to fix your car, you can. If you want to learn how to work on guitars, like you were talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anything is available to you at the click of a button on your mobile device or on your computer. But it takes away the personal element. So back in the day, we used to be understudies, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's how you and I learned.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about how the beginnings of your guitar,
well, that's kind of that's an interesting little story. Well, it was a summer between the between the first and second grade. I was like 6.5 years old.
Wow.
And I had just started taking some guitar lessons at a local music store up in Sacramento, which is Northern California. That's where I was born and raised. My parents are still there, and my sister's still there. That summer, this was the days we had no cell phone, no internet. Obviously, this was the 60s. The Ed Sullivan Show used to come on every Sunday night, and we'd gather around TV and watch it. Black and white television with no remote. The remote was me, with my dad hitting me and say, "Get up and change the channel." So black and white Ed Sullivan, and wouldn't you know it, the Beatles came on, and I had already been learning music. I was into music at that age. I knew I wanted to be a guitar player. This is the honest truth. I want to be a guitar player. I took to it. The only musician in my family was my mother's father, my grandpa Will, who died when I was young, but he was a fiddler. in rural Canada, and he had the ability to just sit in with any kind of band and just start fiddling away. He just felt it.
Wow.
And my mom all my life has been telling me, you're just like your grandpa, so okay, fair enough. So anyway, Beatles came on, and I was like, oh hell, girls, nice suits, the whole ball of wax. I'm really in.
I'm in.
So it was probably around the third grade. That was the days of phonographs and records. Moving the needle ever so gently to learn that one part.
Right.
And my thing was, George Harrison was kind of my first guitar hero. He was a rhythm guitar player. I wanted to be a rhythm guitar player. That was my thing. Later on, by the time I hit maybe 6th, 7th grade, it was James Brown, it was Earth, Wind and Fire, it was Mandrill, it was, of course, Carlos Santana and Buddy Miles.
Mandrill, that's a name you don't hear all the time.
Come on now.
I love the funk repertoire, man.
I have more.
Buddy Miles, yeah.
But that's, I don't want to, make this into a 2-day thing here. But so we'll just start with those names. And so, James Brown, 2 guitar players. Earth, Wind and Fire, 2 guitar players. So then it was still moving and moving the needle, learning those little parts. Mm-hmm. But it was picking out who was playing which one and who was playing the other part. Separating the two and learning those.
That's right.
But also, in my mind, it was like, how are they getting that sound?
Yes.
I was always tone hungry. It's like, okay. Then I started learning the difference between a hollow body guitar and a solid body guitar. The difference between a Strat and a Tele and a Les Paul. Just because those were that was what was around when I was coming up playing.
Those were the tools.
Now, like we were just discussing, it's a wide open field. There's a million different companies making a Strat type guitar.
Yes, or Tele or whatever.
Exactly. So. But you and I are rooted in where it came from.
That's right.
Which I'm happy that in my personal life I was able to grab onto that. So fast forward. So then starting 7th, 8th grade, I got in a band. I was the little white boy with a wah-wah pedal with all brothers in their late 20s playing R&B, funk, James Brown, Isaac Hayes. When Shaft came out, going back to the record.
You ate it for breakfast, right?
That first 12 bars I repeated. If I had a loop machine back then, I'd have been probably in heaven.
Right.
So that was us. So I started working clubs when I was 14 years old. 5-6 nights a week, and it got to be pretty steady because these guys were older than me, but they were all like brothers to me. They looked out for me. They got me into the club. They made sure I got home, and with my parents, they were very my parents really trusted him. The only thing my dad said, he was like, okay, if I got to kick your ass out of bed to go to school in the morning, this shit is over. Because I was coming home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So my whole childhood, I lived at home, I went to school, and I made money playing clubs. And back in the mid 60s, that's like being that's kind of cool. But which enabled me to start. I didn't need to get an allowance or anything. Enabled me to start putting a little money away for things.
Amazing.
So thus, I got my first white, because I wanted an Olympic white Fender Strat with a maple neck like Jimi Hendrix. So I saved my money. I think I paid probably $350 for it back then.
Wow.
And if I had that guitar today, long story short, it got stolen about 10 years later out of a trunk of a car. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. So that's then. And then, growing up in the 70s, the club scene, especially up in Northern California, I think it was everywhere, but that's where I was. So, there was live bands and clubs everywhere, and all we did was just rotate. Okay, we play in this club for 2 weeks, then we move over to this club, and that band would move over to the club. It was like a cycle. Wow. So growing up, I was working probably at least 5 to 8 clubs constantly. It was a great. I'm telling you, it was a great time.
Okay, and that is serious, like real in the field, real life experience.
School.
So again, this brings to the point. You're not learning it from a video. You're learning it from interaction, social interaction, human interaction on a daily basis.
Absolutely, and with older musicians who were really good. Right?
That's invaluable. You can't put a price tag.
And by the time I hit high school, I was in stage band and studying music theory.
Okay, so
at the same time.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And then music history came in. I knew who Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra.
That's right.
And Count Basie and Duke Ellington were, and Sammy Nestico.
Look at that.
And all of these cats. Matter of fact, we were doing some of their charts in stage band.
Right.
So I'm so thankful that that knowledge is still embedded in me, because how they make the way the records are made today and stuff. It's almost a different language, quite honestly.
It really is.
And I certainly don't mind being called old school. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fair enough.
Because it's bad as hell. It's killer. It's amazing music.
It's passion. Well, it's just based on the passion you have for playing music, for being a guitar player, for the craft. Absolutely.
Yes. Wow.
So, I moved to LA in 83, I think, 1983.
So by this point, there's another term, of course, I've coined that I like to say, the career guitarist. So by this point, with all your club experience, all your schooling and jazz band experience, now you're officially going after the position of career guitarist.
Yeah, well, it was pretty much looking back on it now. That was my gig, because to this day, and I'm a lot older, as you know.
Yeah, well, don't show it.
Well, thank you. I've never really had a job, quote unquote.
I love it.
But at that point, before I came to LA, I was falling into the Chick Corea, Al Di Meola, George Duke, the whole fusion movement, Billy Cobham.
Yes.
George Benson. George Benson, before he opened his mouth, back from the Creed Taylor days. I have
the bebop stuff he was doing back then, right?
Oh, fabulous. Early 70s. Yeah, all the White Rat, all that stuff that he did. And I have boxes. I still to this day have all my albums in boxes in a bedroom in the house there. There's like hundreds of them, probably close to 900 of them. And that was part of my little drug at the time, was having $20-25 to go to the record store a couple times a month and picking out 2 to 3 albums and building a collection. But for me, that was like textbooks. That's what I equated it to. That's why I'm going to learn how does Di Meola get that tone? How is he playing so fast? And when I see him, I was trying to figure all that shit out.
Well, that was our YouTube. It was audio tube.
Yeah.
There was no tube element. It was just audio. And again, not to harp on this, but there is an advantage with video. There's a huge advantage.
Oh, are you kidding?
Not only can you hear it, you see it, and so that's the disconnect.
It can be broken down so much better.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, had I had that tool. But there again, I'm gonna live with what I had because of where we're at now.
Well, we didn't know any better.
We didn't exactly.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to LA, George Duke was a hero of mine. We were doing George Duke tunes and and that kind of thing. And so I get to LA and my brother had been here maybe a year and a half before me. And so he said, "Come on, you got to get down here." And at first I thought, short story, I thought the band was going to come with, and those are the days where you go down and get a deal as a band, and you'll be rich and famous and all that. Well, come on, let's factor in reality. That didn't happen. I came down by myself. Yeah. Those guys are still there. And I'm sleeping on my brother's couch, and one of my good dear buddies who passed away about 5 years ago, Robert Brookins. I grew up with him, and he, at the time, was working with George Duke. Robert was a great writer. He wrote some stuff for Jeffrey Osborne. I don't know if you know this.
I do not.
But Robert was a great writer at the time. He was doing stuff for Stephanie Mills, Philip Bailey. Needless to say, he introduced me to all of them over the years. And the first one he introduced me to was George Duke. He said, "Come by George's house He's letting me use the studio so I can cut demos at night. I want you to play guitar on them. Just show up like around 6 p.m., And so I go. George was the first place, home I was at, where the whole bottom of the house was like a real commercially rigged studio. There was a live room, there was a control room, there was an office, there was a lounge. This is all on the bottom level of his house, probably an old basement or something. He had a 10-foot Bossendorfer Grand sitting in there, drum kits. I mean, it was a really full-blown studio.
Real deal, yeah.
So, in my mind, I'm going, geez, I'm pulling up to George Duke's driveway. He's already gone for the day. He's upstairs. As me and Robert and Eric Zobler, his engineer. Eric, you might know him. He's done so much stuff as an engineer. Wow. So anyway, long story short, yet again, I'm sitting there we're tracking Robert's stuff, and I'm basically just going direct to the board just to get some stuff down, and I'm sitting there just daydreaming. God, wouldn't it be great if George comes downstairs and hears what we're doing? Well, what the hell happens? Probably within the next half hour, I hear this voice. Hey man, what's going on? George Duke, right? And I'm like, holy shit, And so he comes in, and he's listening to stuff, and he's grooving. He ends up staying down there for a while, And so then another daydream pops in my head. It's like, God, I wonder if wouldn't it be great if he wanted me to come back? So at the end of the night, George comes back down to lock everything up. We're hauling our gear out of there and leaving. He goes, hey, Kevin, man, you got a number or a business card you can leave with me? I want to use you on some sessions. I about pissed myself. I mean, honestly.
And how old were you?
I was at the time about 22.
And this is the way it happens, man.
That's the way, and that turned into almost 10 years of work.
Incredible.
Because at the time, George was establishing himself as a producer. He was doing all the Jeffrey stuff, amongst others. Right. He was producing Japanese artists. Wow. And he was huge in Japan. Thus, my first forays into going to Japan. I was going to Japan at times 2-3 times a year for extended periods.
To work with George.
To work with George.
In the studio context?
Live tours, shows.
Oh,
we did the very
for his stuff.
Yeah, we did the very first Japan Aid over there, which at the time was like Farm Aid here.
Wow.
And it's still going on. And so that led to a lot of stuff. And then, that's how I met Philip Bailey, who I worked with for years on his solo stuff. And other folks, and then I got a call through another musician friend of mine, Mark Stevens, fabulous keyboard player.
Yeah,
Mark.
Yeah.
He said, "Listen, man, Diana Ross is auditioning guitar players, and I'm going to drop your name in the hat. I can't make any guarantees." Well, Mark must have pulled some strings because they auditioned 29 guitar players and couldn't make up their mind. So I was number 30. And now, at the time, you got to understand, there were people like Mike Miller. I even think Paul Jackson auditioned. Some of the top. I've been in LA long enough to know who the good guitar players were that were working a lot, playing on records. Their name. People knew the name.
Yeah.
Might not know the face, but they know the name, right? I'm like going, jeez, man. I pull up in my little Toyota with a Fender Twin. And that salmon pink Strat right there, I'll never forget it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I didn't really have much of a pedal board. I think I had a Boss Overdrive pedal and a wah-wah pedal. And everything else was, and they put some charts on a stand. There was like 4 or 5 of them. And they said, okay. And right on the chart, I'll never forget this, right on the chart, like some of them had said at the top, they just had, on a guitar chart, sometimes you just see 16th note chop, slanted lines.
Sure.
And it just says, F minor, play in a funky chank style.
Yeah,
or skanky.
Yeah,
skanky or chanky.
Skanky, yeah.
And, when I grew up, being a skanker that was a style, right?
Yo,
so I saw that. I saw that. I was like, okay, I understand exactly what they mean.
Guitar language, bro.
Oh no, and so I
love it.
I think that one of the first tunes we did was something a classic old R&B Motown thing called The Boss, and it's just straight up rhythm, straight sound, guitar, and
holding it down,
just stroking all the way through, skanking all the way through. And they before we got started, they said, well, we're not going to play the whole chart, so we just want to get a feel.
Okay.
Well, we got to the end of the chart. And and then they stopped and they said, "Okay, let's do the next one." I was like, "Oh shit!" So that little bonfire in my gut started to ignite, and we got through all 5 charts and we played every single one of them. Wow. And I remember 2 of them had some, I think Mirror Mirror was one of them, where it was kind of a rock style guitar solo, but heavy rhythm. I think that's Nile Rodgers, who was another hero of mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And matter of fact, at that time when they were auditioning, this was 1989, I remember it vividly, Nile had just produced an album on Diana Ross called Working Overtime, and it was getting some play. So anyway, we did some of that, and I packed up my shit, and I was like, okay, well, that was fun. I really got an eyeful. It was at SIR down in Hollywood there, and all the cats were rehearsing in the other rooms. It was like rock and roll heaven. I think Bon Jovi was down the hall somewhere or something, so I was like, shit, I don't want to leave. I'll sleep here tonight. I was in heaven. That's all I could say. So a couple days later, the phone rings, and they said, you got the gig, and here's what's going on. We're going to do a world tour, and it's going to take 9 months of your time.
Kevin.
I was like, really? Okay. They said, we're going to send you. I was just trying to hold my pee in. Is what,
be as cool as possible.
And they said, well, we're going to send you these contracts and things. Just look them over, sign them, and send them back. I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And I hung up the phone, and I think I broke down in tears or something. I don't know. Yeah. Because then, I was still scratching my way around doing clubs. I also was doing a lot of sessions with George and stuff, but to go on tour was actually a dream of mine, to just go to other places, let alone around the friggin' world.
Right. And to be paid doing what you love,
it bought this place.
Look at that.
And that was 23 years of her, and I was her musical director for the last 18 years of it.
23 years music director. 18 years.
Yeah, and I stopped it. Let's see, was it 2018? I stopped it in late 2010.
Kevin, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you so bad about this podcast, because you understand the concept of not only getting a gig, but keeping a gig. And
there's things about that.
And we're going to dig into that in a minute.
Yeah,
what an amazing story.
Sorry to be so long-winded.
No, please. And this is how you know Mike Droke so well. From this association, right?
Well, truth be known, I pulled him on the Diana gig.
Beautiful.
Because he worked with us with Jeffrey Osborne, who I'm still with.
Absolutely.
And I, she was looking for a tour manager, road manager, front of house guy. That was the time where they were kind of getting one guy that can wear all those hats.
Yeah.
And so I got Mike on the gig.
That's beautiful.
And he's been there ever since.
Droke, we love you.
But hey.
So, man, okay, incredible. I'm just enamored by that. All right, so now you've already established yourself in LA as kind of a session guy. You might not be the A-lister yet, but you're doing some sessions with George Duke.
I was never an A-lister.
Yeah, but but I didn't mind. A-list company.
I was just happy to be a guitar player and waking up every day.
Amen to that. But check it out. As we know in marketing, look, if you could put it on your resume and it's legit, it's there, man. You worked with George Duke in the studio.
Yes.
So you're doing some studio work. You're still doing some clubs. You're touring with George in Japan. Then you get this 9-month world tour.
The first one, yeah.
With Diana Ross.
Right.
You kept the gig for 23 years. You were her MD for 18 years. I mean, the podcast could end right here and we'd be done.
Right.
Okay. So now, if instead of going through more stories, I just want to ask you some pointed questions.
Sure. Please do.
So number one, you're going on tour. And you're green. You haven't been on tour yet.
Yes.
What's the first thing you do to prepare? And do you have any mentors that you reach out to?
Okay. The first thing to prepare, and I remember and I don't ask me where this came from, but I always remembered, I think it might have came from my father, but he was always the one that told me, he said, if you do anything, learn how to carry yourself and carry yourself well. And don't piss anybody off. Okay? Just don't piss anybody off. And, you're taking flights with the same group of people. And, and back in those days, her tours were a machine. There was 40, 45 people moving all at once.
Right.
Probably 5 to 6 tour buses, 4 trucks. So it was a machine.
Wow.
So you're basically living together for 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time. Come home for 2 weeks and then go back out and do this for a whole freaking year.
Yeah.
And then start over the next year. So, so one of the things, I hope this answers the question, but one of the things is you got to be able to fit into the landscape. Not only, playing is important. Let's not forget. You want to have that covered. But if you're going to take it beyond the playing, you got to learn. Some guys are really great players, but they're not that social, or you might get the wrong idea because you think he's pissed off at you, but he's just a quiet person.
He's just quiet.
Or complaining, dark cloud type stuff for me was always a thing. It's just like I was thrilled to be there, and then quite honestly, there would be people around, and I won't say whether they were crew or band, it was just people around that I'm traveling with that are, this. I felt that they were finding things to complain about.
Right.
When I told my dad what I was making a week, and he was going, that's like a 6-month salary for some of us normal Joes,
working.
And he would be like, "You're doing it playing guitar." So he said, "Don't listen to those guys," because I had to. My parents, I had to ground myself to just try to play that properly. So I think that's a thing to wrap your head around. And like I said, we've talked enough about music till we already know. Yes, musically you have to be, if they want a strong rhythm player, if it's R&B stuff, yes, you're going to need that. If they want a jazz Olympian,
you got to be able to
then that's what you do. But
you have to be a motherfucker, as the old cats put it.
Yeah.
He's a motherfucker.
Fuck yeah.
He's a heavy cat.
Yeah. But learning where to place that, I think, is important.
Right.
So
because it's not the only element to the gig.
Right, because we're talking about making a living at this and working. You see what I'm saying?
I'm knocking on wood here because these affirmations are amazing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm old enough now to know them to be true. I used to see some cats get the gig, and then I'd hover around with some of the other musicians, and then there'd be little minor grumblings about, I don't know how he got this gig. He's not that good. But then I just kind of soaked that in, and then later on, after we had some time on the road and stuff, I'm going, okay, I see how this guy got the gig, because he's a pleasure to be around.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
He's a good person,
and he's got a little rapport and juice with the artist. Let's face it, some of these artists, you might be traveling with them, but they don't want to talk to any of the musicians, or they won't. They talk to enough people. Let's put it that way.
They don't need friends.
No.
The reality is, you are there to do a job, not to be their friend.
Right. So I was like, okay, well, that's why he's on the gig, is because he can open his mouth and have a conversation with you.
Yes.
And that's important. Honestly.
So important.
I've been with Jeffrey Osborne now for 23 years. It's been the same band pretty much the whole time. That unit is a bunch of motherfuckers that have been around each other a long time. And we just roll into sound check. We do what we got to do, and we all sit down and have fucking dinner together.
And have dinner and hang out and have a great
Still to this day, we always eat together. We hang out on the road together. We come home at baggage claim. We get our bags. Okay, man, I'll see you whenever the next date is. Say hi to mom or whatever, and there's something to be said for that.
That's a familial camaraderie that you don't find in other jobs. Right?
It's a gift.
Yes.
I look at it as a gift.
Yes. All right, folks, especially for my younger generations who are wondering how to get into the touring world and how to do this, it's relationship based. And what Kevin said, that should be your paradigm. It's a gift. Because as your father told you, and my father told me the same to this day, be grateful. for what you have. Because my dad would always put it like, you could be out there digging a ditch.
Oh, that
and guess
sounds like
what?
my dad.
There's people digging ditches when you drive down the street. You're like, wow, well, I'm not doing that, you know?
Right.
So, and I think that if you keep that at the top, that you're grateful for this position, if you keep that at the top of your mind on a daily basis, the rumblings, the grumblings, the complaints will literally go away.
Yeah, and not only that, you just learn how to navigate around it, because you know, some things you just can't stop.
You have to be a problem solver.
Well, yeah, and you just like my old man said, you know, learn how to carry yourself and just look beyond that and fit in.
Yes.
Go seek and go fit in.
Wow. I've become somewhat. I think we all have in this business. We've become somewhat of logistics experts.
Oh yeah.
Because although when you do go on tour, although you have tour managers, road managers, a lot of times you're on your own because the tour manager can't be everywhere at once.
No, he's always busy.
They're always busy. And secondly, you're an adult.
Yeah.
So figure it out, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so I get exactly what you're talking about, man. So fit in with the landscape, learn how to be, you know, a social, cool hang. 23. Here's the thing. So let me clarify. 23 years with Diana. 23 years with Jeffrey.
I'm going on 23 years with Jeffrey. So the one thing is
amazing.
You know how we are as musicians. We always want to be working. Diana would have downtime, so I was lucky enough to get other things. I mean, I could tell you some other artists I work with, but we don't need to go there.
No, of course, I want to hear about it.
I toured with Shaka for 5 years in the 90s, Philip Bailey for 9 years off and on, George Duke, of course, and even after I got the Diana gig, he called me for some things. We'd go to Japan for a couple weeks. And, you know, so I managed, thank you, Lord, to stay working. So that's how when you hear the same amount of years was two different people. It's not at the same time, obviously.
No, of course.
Because there are holes.
But they dovetail one another. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, but this is the amazing part of it, man. What is your secret in addition to what you just divulged? To keeping now you talked about fitting in with the landscape in a social context and keeping your grumblings down and having a positive spirit, musically or as the music director. And what else?
Well, if I could say anything else about it, it's just, you know, leave it to where if you have to leave, make them want you back. You know, get on the first bench. You know, do what it takes to make them want you back. Oh, you're subbing for Kevin right now, but when he comes back, just you know what I mean,
right?
Or because sometimes they will overlap, and you got to make a choice. Obviously, the first choice would be, well, if this one's paying more than the other. There's so many times I would go out with Diana, and Jeffrey would let me go, but let me tell you, that chair was waiting for me when I got back. That is important. That all falls into, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No.
That all falls into what we were discussing earlier about, you know, just fit in. You know, you're like a baseball team in the locker room. You know, the Lakers were great for so many years because they had camaraderie. Just example off the top of my head. Right. You know, be a team player. You know.
I love it.
That's all I could really think about.
And man, I mean, subbing out, that is a tricky situation as well.
Very tricky.
Because people are always concerned about losing their position.
Right. And I've seen it happen.
But as long as you're in good graces with the powers that be, so to speak.
Right. That's why that's so important.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say.
So extensive touring experience, and now, if you don't mind, let's shift gears. The studio experience. Obviously, you started in the studio with George Duke. You started at the top, bro.
Well, I don't know about that, but in the '80s and most of the '90s, I was probably pretty much a session rat. You know, that's when, you know, you would do sessions. There were union sessions. They were for labels, so they could send cartage out to pick up all your gear, because, you know, in the old days, guitar players, we had to bring gear, you know, many guitars and a couple different amps, because they want to find what they're looking for. Now obviously that's a whole nother conversation with the technology we have.
Something that I want to talk about, you really covered it pretty well. You're very thorough, and I appreciate that. something that I have, Nomad's rules of the road. Rule number 1. So
For what they're worth, right?
Yeah, exactly. So little things. For instance, nowadays I try not to fly carrying guitars on if I can prevent it, because a lot of times it's so difficult. Especially there was a 10-year window where the flight attendants and the gate people there, were real sticklers about that. They just wouldn't allow it. I've had some really bad experiences with
As have I.
Yeah. So that's like a little road rule. So
Right.
What are some of your little quick road rules that you like to adhere to?
Well, I will tell you, for years, especially when you have a guitar tech available on things, putting your gear in truck. I have flight cases in the shed out back that I would just check.
Yep.
I'm back to carrying a mono bag, a mono case.
I saw it over here. I have the same one. Love it.
And that new one with that rubber boot on the bottom is fabulous.
And it's real sleek.
It's sleek. And Paul Jackson Jr., he has a double mono bag, and he just checks it through with the luggage. And he has 2 of his nice signature model guitars in there. So I'm like going, okay, that's fine with me.
That's trustworthy, yeah.
and I carry that, and I go, as we spoke about when I saw you in the last show we did together,
Right.
I'm going direct with the unit I'm using at this time now is the Roland GR55, or the Boss Roland.
Yeah.
So I go direct. It's fine. So I can carry both on the plane, but just in case, you never know when you have one like an Eagle Flight, which is a smaller jet.
Regionals, yeah.
The overhead's not gonna fit a guitar no matter what case it's in. So I can check that. Bill Sharp, our bassist, does the same things. We gate check them, and they come back.
There you go.
And I've done it a million times, and I put the Paoletti in there too, and it was fabulous.
Right.
It was fine.
That's so funny, because I agree with that. But
Right.
some people are really afraid of that.
I think if I were to break it down, if I'm going to do flight cases, it's easier when you have somewhat of a crew to help you with that. But when you got to do everything on your own, that's the reason I started going direct. Is because I'm my own tech now, pretty much. So I just take everything with me. But that's just me, and it works. And I think, I got on a flight just over this weekend actually with a traditional oud player.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you know the shape of an oud, but the case is somewhat between a French horn case and a tuba case, and because it's got that big thick head and it protrudes funny.
I know very well.
Yeah, so you know what an oud, of course,
And
your
it's-
heritage.
and
Yeah.
Well, and it's delicate because that headstock can break right off.
Thus, for a reason for the hard case.
Yeah.
And you ain't going to check that thing. So this guy put it up top, and I talked to him in baggage claim. I said, "Do they sweat?" He says, they used to, but they just don't do it anymore. They kind of calmed down. So maybe that's a trend. I'll go with that.
I have experienced that they've lightened up a bit.
Yeah.
How about logistically? I think, like, for me, one of my little quirks is I understand I can't fly first class and business class, and if I collect my miles, so that's a quirk. Always collect your miles, because you
Been
never
doing
know
it
when
for
you get
years.
the upgrade, or you can take vacations and fly for free.
Yes.
But one of the things is I have a habit of going on the airlines online on my app or on the computer and checking just to make sure my seat is cool and everything. Little quirks like that.
I do the same thing.
Right? I mean, these are just like little travel hacks. Making sure you have your passenger, your what do you call it? Your pre-check, your TSA pre, and all that.
Got the TSC pre in line. That's that. I'll tell you, that is
Isn't
great.
that amazing?
I love it. I'll never go back.
Have you applied for global entry?
Some of the guys have. I haven't done it yet.
Okay, that really helps too. When you go in and out of customs,
Right.
it's quick.
Right.
So that definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna look into that further, but
I know a lot of times people. I know other musicians even look at me and like, man, that guy's real anal retentive about the way he does stuff, and it's just part of my thing.
I'm the same way, so I don't see that.
Right. And because we do it for a living,
Yeah.
it's kind of important. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, are you talking about the instrument and the just traveling with the
just the
instrument?
traveling logistics and the rules.
Let me ask
of
you
the
a
road.
question. You're a father, right?
Absolutely.
I rest my case.
Here you go. Bam. That's it.
Just related to that.
I think that's great. I think that's a great analogy.
Right.
That's
Right.
killer.
Yeah.
So you're in the 80s and 90s. This is where I fell in love with the idea of being, again, a career guitarist. I didn't even know what that was until just a couple of years ago until I wrote my book. It's called The Career Guitarist. But I always wanted to be that. I was always aspiring to be one.
I got to get that book, by the way.
Yes.
And I'm saying that on the record.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you. Well, I
will buy it.
No, you're too kind.
No.
So Paul Jackson Jr., Steve Lukather,
all my
Mike
heroes.
Landau. These are all my heroes, and all your buddies. See, I'm fortunate enough to call a couple of them my buddies. Not all of them. I don't know them all well. But man, I was living in Florida at the time. Moved from New York. I grew up in New York. Moved to Florida, and I would always get the Guitar Player magazines and study the records the same way you did. And I was just enamored by what these guys did. So now my point is, I was 3,000 miles away. You're in LA and you're doing it. That had to be a whole nother experience on another level. A whole experience on another level, because from far away, guys like myself were aspiring to do this, and man, we just dreamed of it. But here, it's in your lap.
Yes. And one thing to say about, now with technology, it's a lot easier to work remotely. But here's the thing. A lot of cats that are local have a better chance of staying and getting on, especially the touring situation.
Right. Right.
And that's just something that I've just discovered. I don't say it's a general rule. There are cats that, just like famous actresses, they don't want to live in Hollywood or LA, and they live out in the middle of the country somewhere, and they fly in and out for their projects. You could do that. It's always worked out better to be here.
Right.
Is one comment about that. And then what was the other thing?
I agree with that. Like, a lot of the guys that I would study under, they would say, you got to go where the work is. Right?
Yeah. And it didn't, it was always my, I grew up in Northern California, in South Sacramento, smallish town. It might be the capital of California, but South Sac is very rural. At least it was when I grew up. So when I was in elementary school, it was always my dream to move to the big city, and it was always my dream to move to LA. So that was already kind of tattooed in my brain from a very young age. But it is true, if you want to do musical theater, you got to be on Broadway. That's right. I mean, it is location based. I will tend to agree with that. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So once you're here though, and you're in it, what was that experience like being a session cat in the 80s and 90s? Because you're rubbing elbows with these cats that you've always.
Well, at first it was pretty scary because I had doubts about myself. Oh my God, are they never going to call me back? Am I going to fuck this up? Or, are they going to replace my track with somebody great? And so at first it was nerve wracking, but then, I don't know what it was, but I maybe I just had my father in me. His advice: just pay attention. Just pay attention. See how the landscape is operating. Don't play too much. Don't try to come in there and impress anybody. Try to come in there and play what they're looking for.
That's right.
And then of course, listening to a lot of records coming up, I was always honed in on how guitar parts fit the song versus playing just great guitar on a recording. I think there's somewhat of a difference. And I learned very quickly that making records is vastly different than being a great guitar player and not getting any work for that reason. You know what I mean? There's cats that can't play like Landau or Steve Lukather, but they're on every record under the sun. David Williams, an example.
That's right.
God rest his soul. He was kind of a buddy of mine I got to know later in his life before he passed. He played on every freaking Michael Jackson record from the early, him and Paul Jackson Jr. And then when I got to know him, I picked his brain. I said, how'd you get this tone? How did you approach this? He said, and he would tell me little stories about, Michael would always be in the studio overseeing everything. If it was guitar overdub day, he was there to make sure all the guitar overdubs went down the way he wanted them to go down.
Wow.
He said my job was to come in and give him the tone he was hearing in his head, because Michael's not a guitar player, so he can't tell you, well, that's a front pickup Strat or Les Paul through, 4-speaker cabinet or an
put
old
some
Fender amp.
compression, blah, blah, blah.
I'm looking for this clean sound, kind of like on this old Heatwave song. Okay, there you go. There's my direction. Bam. And he said he would do things like set up 4x12 cabinets, mic them both, but only mic one speaker on the edge from each cabinet, and then take a couple mics and mic them from a distance so you get the room sound and get the whole cabinet as well. And they would blend all that through. See, because they had the opportunity to take time to do all that. Can you imagine what the setup time was at before they actually started? And I'll say it, rolling tape.
That's right.
Because all those records were done on tape.
That's right.
So
David Williams was a mentor.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I was like, how in the hell?
How fortunate.
His tone. Well, yeah, but I mean, I listened to him more than I knew him.
Of course.
I just felt blessed that, before you know it, he's staying in the same hotels, and I just would introduce myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're playing with Diana Ross, and he says, yeah, and he was out with Michael. We did a lot of, like, when we'd be in Europe, we'd always somehow be in the same hotels.
Sure.
It was kind of crazy. But anyway, so he started telling me how he did that. But you listen to those old records, just like, I'll use another example, the old Eagle records. The guitar work on that, it's like they must have sat down for a year and just kept finding and seeking and looking for those parts. Because some of those, not to interrupt you, but some of those songs have a million guitar parts in there, and they're placed all over the place.
I swear you're inside my head. I think about this all the time. How the hell did they do it?
Exactly. And that captivated me.
Same. And we could just sit here and...
Oh, yeah. We already knew that.
Ages.
Yeah.
No, but it's so funny you say that. Speak on that, if you will. Expound into the creative process on how you think, how the hell did they get records so amazing and these little hooky parts and all the parts work together?
And to add to that, that's what made a really good song or a really good record, was the craft of making the record, not coming in there and impressing everybody with your chops or with what you know or everything. Fit into the yet again, I'll go back to it. Fit in with the song, fit in with the landscape. Do what's asked for, but remember that they asked you to be there, so still be you. I mean, I know that seems like a weird equation to put together, but if you can somehow naturally feel that when you just, there's something about scoping out a room when you walk into it, right? Well, session-wise, that's how these guys work so much, is because they're able to do that. It's like if somebody puts a chart in front of you, okay, and, a lot of these great guitar players, they read when they're doing sessions, but they'll turn around and tell you, I'm not the greatest reader. I said, well, how in the hell did you get through that chart in such a short time? He says, well, I just take it a piece at a time. Right. I take the first 2 bars, if it's, a row of 16th notes or whatever, I scope it out, I find out the position, what string it is, I go next, and then before you know it, 10 minutes later, I'm putting it together.
That's right.
And I'm like, okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's the same way here. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I mean, because guitar is one of the hardest instruments to read music on, because you can play one note in different places. So which way do you go? Do you go vertically or do you go horizontally? You know what I mean? And that's a choice you have to make. What's his name? Dean Parks.
Yes, tell me. I love
fabulous.
We're all
that
ears.
guy.
I love Dean. Tell me.
Oh, I got a long time ago. This is back in the late 80s. I got to sit in on a couple sessions. He was there, and it was just guitar overdub. I don't even remember who it was for. How about that? But I remember sitting in the control room, and he's out in the live room. He's got a couple of mics placed in front of him at different places. He has this old beat the fuck up Martin acoustic steel string guitar, but the fucking tone, and he was playing with his fingers, no pick. But he had nails, so he had that sound that a skin and nail makes on a steel string acoustic. There's a thing of that.
That's why I have nails.
Yeah, exactly. There's a thing about that, and his tone. I mean, I just was pissing myself because his tone was just so good, and he had a piece in front of him, and I could tell they were looking for parts.
Yeah.
And he had the uncanny ability. Once he had the chart, he knew the chart. Basically, all he was getting, I remember this, all he was really taking from the chart was the melody. But this was a vocal tune. It was for some, God, who was the singer? It was, anyway, it'll probably come to me after you turn the mic off. But anyway, so once he had the melody down, he started playing around with it. Then he started putting harmonies under it. Then before you know it, it turned into some kind of chord pattern that he was finger picking. And the whole time they're recording him, so they have different versions of a part that will go in the same place in the tune. Whether it be the first 16 bars, the first verse, whether they're on the chorus. I mean, that's so long ago I can't specifically remember, but just use that as a guideline. And, you know, before you know it, when at the end of the day, I remember I must have stayed there for 5 hours until they were done, you know. And I was like, I was lucky I had the freedom to do that. And you know, they had many different takes and versions of the same part of the song they were recording on. That way they can go back and pick and choose. So I learned very early on that it's better to have and not need than need and not have. You know, when it comes to give them more than they're actually going to want. You know, I remember I got into the habit, especially with George. He says, yeah, that sounds good, Kevin. We'll keep that part. I said, let me just do another one just for laughs. And that was my way of just sneaking in another thing that they could pick from on the same part. Right. You know.
Now that is what makes up a studio rat. That whole concept. These are the little pieces that you put together to make up the anatomy of a studio player.
And to construct a song that a proper song that, you know, because at the time you're wearing the pressure of, okay, this has got to be on the radio. This is not going to be on somebody. Well, there were no iPhones then, so right. This is not going to be in somebody's pocket. This is going to be over the air. So once it's down, you got to live with it. That's and right. I remember I used to hear stories from back in the day. It's like, God, I should have played that part better. You know, what an uncomfortable feeling. Can you imagine hearing yourself on the radio and go, God, that so sucks. Why didn't I fix that? You know.
Thank God you're in the studio. You get the chance. But yeah, if you don't redo it, I can imagine. Man, I spent a good 8 years in Nashville doing quite a bit of session work. That was like my main stint in Nashville.
That's where you get those chops.
Yeah. Well, because I can relate to all.
That's
these
guitar
chops.
Heaven.
This is guitar heaven, but I wasn't the country guy. I was the R&B, Latin.
Doesn't matter.
Pop guy. Yeah. So it was perfect. But studying Dean Parks and Paul Jackson, guys like yourself and Dave Williams, all the greats. This is where you learn these little bits of information, and when you go in, you are there to facilitate the producer and the artist's vision.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's what makes up a great studio guy. You said it, it's better to, you know...
Have and not need. Yeah, and then need and not have. Yeah.
And then the other thing you said is, look, I'm not here to show you my chops. I'm here to enhance the song.
Yeah.
You know.
And that could be just a little part that'll be buried in the background. You wouldn't even know it's there. But, you know... if you take it away, that little percolation, that effect that it's having on the track is gone. So you know something's missing. You just can't put your finger on it. See, that's the little details that are...
And that's one of the biggest nuances I feel about rhythm guitar, like you said earlier. Especially as it applies to R&B and funk, don't you think?
Yes.
It's like funk is all about space, right?
Absolutely. This is Jeffrey's new record. Just came out. He just gave me a copy in package claim over the weekend.
Wow, that's awesome.
And if you'll see, me and Bill Sharp are on every cut, and there's guitar everywhere. And the way Tommy Vicari ended up mastering that record, because he did all Jeffrey's hit solo records back in the day, and the treatment he did with the guitar, and just how it's still really there, prominent in the mix. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
And but I learned a lot doing that project with Jeffrey. You know, he got a deal on Mack Avenue Records, just a short story, and Mack Avenue told him, we want you to compose everything and produce it yourself. And that's what he did. Thus, because I know Face wanted to write something for him.
Yeah.
And he actually submitted a couple things.
Yeah.
And then when we saw you guys in Chicago not too long ago, did that show together, you know, Jeffrey, he said they hung out the whole time before you guys went on.
Right.
Before we went on, actually. And
that connection is obviously still there. But that was the deal with that.
I can't wait. I'm going to download it today.
I think you can,
Yeah.
and I'll make sure you have this. But one of the things I'm really it just touches me is at the end and the special thanks. He gave special thanks to me and Bill for all of our input.
Wow.
That was like a childhood dream for me to have that on an album. Well, see, I still call them records.
Yeah. Album record.
Hi, I'm Kevin Chokan, and I'm a career musician.
Nomad is the career musician. In this podcast, we highlight interviews with other industry professionals, providing insight and practical wisdom for the next generation of aspiring career musicians.
Help us continue to provide you with new and engaging content by getting our ratings up. Please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Subscribe to The Career Musician on Apple Podcasts. Have your questions answered on Q&A Sundays using hashtag AskNomad.
So it's rare that just for some people who may not know, it's rare that you would be a road guy and a studio guy for the same artist. That doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't.
Especially back in the 80s and 90s when the studio was its own thing, you know?
Right.
It was like you had your studio cats and your road cats.
Right.
Nowadays it's more blurred lines.
Let me just say one thing about that and Jeffrey Osborne. I've known Jeffrey Osborne for a number of years now, well, like 23 years, going on 23 years. And he is one of the classic singers of our time that is still here. Mm-hmm. He is in excellent physical shape and an excellent physical voice. He is one of the loyalest people I know. He is a fellow musician. You know, he doesn't act like an artist, if I may use that word. I'm quoting, if you could get a visual with my fingers. So, you know, I mean, I play golf with him. You know what I mean? And, you know, I've done many records with him before. I think this is probably the 7th record I've actually done with him. Mm. But Mac Avenue is a label that has appeared now after all the record companies and everything. That whole landscape changed. The whole studio landscape changed. Hell, the whole record store landscape changed.
So after the rubble is all there.
Yeah, now the rubble is settled. There's smoke is still kind of fizzing a little bit, but you know, there are companies that said, look, we'll give you a deal, but that we want you to do everything. And you know, Jeffrey's got a great studio at his house, and we did everything there, and I learned a lot working with him as a producer. I mean, we did bass tracks where Bill would record 3 different tracks, and maybe one track would just have a, you know, where he's snapping the string with his first finger, just in between what he's doing. So when it comes time for the mix, they have all that separate. Because a lot of times if you do all that together on one track, something might be hotter than the other, something might sound not fat enough, and that could, EQ-wise, that could drive you nuts trying to spike just those little hits every time. And they're not going to happen in the same place. So now you have the randomness, you have the separation, and we did the same thing with guitar. Like when you hear this, there's freaking guitar everywhere.
I can't wait.
And the way Tommy kept it and treated it and put it all in there, I'm just... You know, I'm so happy with it.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and so I forgot what we were talking about.
It doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. Like my usual questionnaire sheet is out the window because because everything you're saying is so informative and so methodical. I love it, and your stories are endearing. I can't help but selfishly, I'm sitting here just saying, oh my gosh. Me too. Oh my gosh! I swear we're brothers. Oh my gosh! I love this fucking guy. I can't.
That's
help
fabulous.
But love you. It's like,
No.
Feel like our paths are so similar, and
yes.
I feel like, and I'm going to put this on record as well. I want you to be my mentor.
We'll be guitar buddies, man. We got a lot to learn. I'll put this on record. I want you to come in here and do some 2 guitar stuff with me. I can do 8 guitar stuff all myself, but here's the trick to that. It's all me. I want
other guys.
Can you talk about chemistry, please? You just said.
Okay, here's a little thing about you. Do you know Morris O'Connor?
Absolutely.
Guitar plays with Earth, Wind and Fire.
Absolutely.
He used to live right around the corner. He could walk to my house.
I love Morris. What a sweetheart.
But years ago he moved to Vegas. It's probably at least 10 years ago.
Okay.
But he used to walk over here all the time with his then younger son.
Are you
And we were guitar buddies, and he would come in here and we would diddle around, and it's kind of before I really had everything set up. So we would record a little bit, but now I got this everything. I'm dialed in, yeah. And so I missed that. So now you're my new guy to come over here, and we'll do the 2 guitar thing, because at the urging of my parents, my dad's 91 and my mom's 88, and they're still, God bless them, they're still spry, and they're going, Kevin, where's your record? Kevin, where's your record? And I've been putting stuff. I got a lot of stuff in the can here.
You got to do it.
But one of my things is I want 2 real separate individual guitar players on things. That's one of the things I'm shooting for. So I spoke to Paul Jackson about doing some things, and I'm going to definitely speak to you about doing some things. And since now that we've got this established, I expect you to be over here a lot more often than.
Absolutely.
This.
I will be your guitar buddy, and I will be seeking career advice and life advice.
Oh, that's just age.
Man, let me tell you, man, it's something about, I'm telling you, in this day and age, the information technology age, there's something lacking. And what's lacking? Human connection, human interaction.
Yes.
Yeah. I miss it. And you don't go. I have a little studio similar to this, and I'm in there every day I'm composing my little cues, or I'm doing a session here and there. I'm producing music for my wife and I, but it's all by myself, and it's frustrating. You want to.
That was one of the things that was so great about doing Jeffrey's record, because he always wanted to record me and Bill Sharp together. So it would be. Our front of house guy, Scott Weatherspoon, who I know you met before.
Yes.
He was out there.
That's right.
And Scott was engineering, and it was Jeffrey, me, and Bill, sitting in front of the console and just hacking away. Okay, try this, try that, try this, try that. Okay, what do you think about it? Just that trial and error, because you have the freedom to do that.
I love that.
But I really took something home with me on that. And what that is I love having my room here to... I can walk in here at midnight and stay here till 5 a.m. and not piss anybody off.
That's right.
And just do my thing.
Yeah.
And go, okay, it's getting light outside. I think I should sleep now.
Right.
But there's something to be said for having somebody like you sitting right where you're sitting with a guitar on your lap, plugged in, and us honing in on 8 bars at a time.
A vibe, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Man.
The one of the things I happened to acquire the knowledge about after I spent so many of my younger years studying was the 2 guitar trick that Earth, Wind and Fire always had. If you remember those old records, there's 2 things I vividly remember. Guitars were placed separate of each other. Mm-hmm. One guy was always on one side, the other guy was always on the other. Okay. So their parts were thought out. Listen to That's the Way of the World. Or listen to Shining Star. Or what are some other examples off the top of my head?
Shining Star, That's the Way of the World is perfect, and the Eagles,
Eagles had like 3 guitar players actually.
It's the same thing. One's rock, one's
they're placed.
R&B. It's perfect.
But what they always did is one, and I'm speaking of the Earth, Wind and Fire days. One guy had a humbucker type guitar, a Les Paul,
or a 335, like Al McKay.
Al McKay. The other guy had the other end, which, as you and I know, is the Strat Telly family.
There you go.
You see what I'm saying? You see my hollow bodies over there.
I love it, bro.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, it's a lost art form. Let's speak about gear briefly.
Okay, absolutely.
Technology has changed so much.
Oh,
and
yes.
You are definitely a maverick. You're not going to let that shit get away from you. You said, man, get your analog pedal board out here. We were on that date together.
Yeah.
You looked at my
I was just flipping you shit, though,
analog pedal board. Now, pedal boards are back in like they're in vogue.
Oh, they are. The boutique pedals are in abundance.
Strymon, JHS, the list goes on. Earthquaker devices, Wall, everybody.
Oh, Wamplers, all that.
I can't get enough of pedals.
I love it.
Right? Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I love it.
But
practicality
Yes.
dictates something different.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you're bringing the digital board. And guess what you finally got me to do, bro?
What?
I leave.
Don't say plugins.
I go no. I go
Because I love those. Don't get me
I
wrong.
love them too. Everything has its use. I'm going to do a couple dates with Face the top of May.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing my Line 6 Helix. And that's all I'm bringing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, see, and you have.
Here's my Line 6 right there.
There you go.
I didn't have room for it.
Yeah. No. And I do the
you're
same
gonna
thing.
love
I
that.
take my pedal boards. I put them on my desk in the studio so I can work.
Yeah. So you're gonna Line 6.
Yep.
Left and right out.
Yep. I'm using the Helix, the new Helix.
I love the Helix.
Yeah.
It's fabulous, and it's built to do that.
It's built.
It's
strong,
built to do
sturdy,
that.
man.
You have line out and input choices in
XLRs,
there.
yes.
XLR, the whole ball of wax.
Awesome.
I recommend using DIs.
Yes. Oh, definitely. To warm it up a bit.
Yeah, it just gives it. But that's fabulous. Wrap your head around it. You'll love it. I'll give you one little bit. A lot of times you can sit in your room or in your studio and program the shit out and go, okay, that's fabulous. But when you get it out in a real world situation, I tended to find I always had it was a little too fat. In other words, I had a little too much bass.
Yep.
So don't be afraid to understand that when you get out to the gig side of your programming, you might have to make some tweaks.
Adjustments,
Thus, it will behoove you to kind of know how to get in there and grab that.
Absolutely. And that's what I spent this past week and a half doing.
Yeah.
So.
Get your favorite patches up. I usually go for the 3 kings: clean, crunch, and dirty.
Woo.
You know what I mean? And then anything else from there.
And then pretty, like a lush one.
Well,
Clean,
my lush
all
one
kinds
would
of
be my
delays.
tri-chorus type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I always have the option for different delays and things. One thing, front of house guys, we love the stereo panning delays,
Yes.
especially in headphones. But in a live situation, they want it down the middle. That's one thing I learned, but that might just be our guy.
Yeah.
But so I put in those options as well.
It's so funny because I was telling my FOH guy and Droke, because Droke was prompting me to do this as well.
To go direct?
To do stereo. I was like, but you gotta let me go stereo so I can do all my fancy delays.
Right.
And they looked at me like, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
So-
Well, yeah. See, because you understand what they're saying. It
I
can
get
get messy, and then like you're stepping on them. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, because they no longer have control of
Exactly.
the mix.
Yeah.
All right. So that aspect is wonderful as far as pedals go. Guitar wise, you have a beautiful collection. And, I think somebody asked me the other day if you could only pick one type of guitar.
One type?
For me, it was Telly's. What is it for you?
I have a very quick answer. It would be a Strat type.
Strat. See?
When I was growing up, it was always a hollow body. It was always either that 150 or that 335, which are both very old. I'd take those on the road with me when I came here. I played clubs with those growing up. I was always the hollow body guy bending 13s. Right? But I was young then. I could do it. Now it hurts.
Stevie Ray Vaughan guy, man.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
he was
Tone, right?
Yeah, he was playing the heavy gauge.
Oh, I know he was. Yeah, that's how he got that sound. But yeah, the answer is a Strat to me, or a Strat type guitar. To me, physically it's comfortable. Tone wise, in a live situation, it covers all your bases. I mean, you could get a nice play with your thumb, jazzy sound, clean, octavey type thing. You can get a lush, in between the pickups, chorusy delay thing. You can get a balls to the wall, David Gilmour situation happening. I mean, you kind of have everything there. I did leave out a Les Paul because I always loved Les Pauls. I actually don't have one, but Bassa built me. I have 2 of them. This is one of them, and we designed. I helped them design this. This is actually a Strat and a Les Paul put in one box.
That's
Thus, all the mini switches, right? It's, these turn into single coils. This will turn into a single coil on all the combinations. So this guitar will sound like a Strat, or it will sound like a nice Les Paul. I use this and the white one on Jeffrey's record a lot for all the rhythm stuff because it sounds great plugged into an SSL channel or a Neve channel, just straight in, right?
Nice.
So, but the question, and in my mind too, you have to pick one. Les Paul, Strat. I gotta go with the Strat because it just seems
See, Les Paul is nice and fat.
Yeah.
And I love fat. But when you put the pickup selection where you're using both pickups, if you on a Strat put it, like you got 5 positions, you put it on the second one where you got the blend of both, you get that silvery thing.
That skank is perfect.
Yeah, and you know what? That's to me that's more useful.
Yeah.
In the situation I'm in.
That's skankalicious.
Playing rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
And on R&B bass type stuff.
And it cuts. I find that register that the Strat, I think that's why it became such the...
Well, and you see them everywhere. I mean, you get spare guitars from backline companies at festivals or whatever shows. There's always Strats there. You rarely see Les Pauls. Well, they don't even bring Les Pauls.
Perfect. When we do your cut off your album, I'll play Telly, you play Strat.
Oh, I've already got it all. It's already structured in my mind.
That is awesome. Man, wrapping this up, Kevin.
Okay.
This has been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Last couple little points here. You said you're the musical director as well.
For Diana.
For Diana. Yeah. I find myself in the same position with Babyface.
Right.
What are some of the business acumen advice you have?
You mean musically or just...
Just on the business side. How to conduct yourself in a business situation. Contracts, phone calls, emails, etc.
One thing. Always remember and never forget that they've given you the position to be the boss. And being the boss, I'm using that as a wide phrase. When I was music director, I was working with some fabulous players: Walt Fowler, Albert Wing, John Pena, Mark Stevens, Jerry Brown. I mean, these are kind of players that I don't want to tell them, no, don't play it like that, play it like this. I don't want to say that to them. Right. But I learned very early on, if nobody says anything, it gets messier than it needs to be. So you need to take charge, and you need to understand that if that's how you're hearing it, it's probably 98% it's correct already, because you're already tuned into the artist. You're answering to the artist. You're just the middleman, and you got to make sure he gets what he gets, even if you disagree with it. So when it comes time to directing traffic with the musicians, tell them what needs to happen. Don't let them talk you into what they think is better. You understand what I'm saying?
Well said.
And that took a minute for me to come upon that. But I'll tell you what, when I came upon that, everything ran smooth as fucking glass.
That's right. What about if you have some personality conflicts? How do you deal with that?
I think the first thing is to kind of put yourself in the middle of it, have a chat, one-on-one. And if that goes fairly well, and you can settle some dust that way, the three of you have a chat.
Excellent.
It's not hard to get cats to shake hands. It really isn't.
You just have to communicate.
You just got to communicate. Yeah,
that's my golden rule.
Yeah, and you know what? If you really think about it, that's another feather in your cap. Because there is a bit of a negotiator type vibe to that slot, to that position.
Sure is.
A great band will always have a really good leader. Lenny Kravitz is a great leader of his band. There's a movie I saw on Netflix where they document a tour he did just maybe 2 years ago, very recent. And one of the things he was very adamant, because he's a musician himself, a very good musician.
That's right.
Plus he's writing everything. So he knows how he wants the shit to sound. And one of the things he stressed, which I know you'll come up with as an MD, is he stresses for the parts that are on the record.
That's right.
All artists will do that. They could be the dipshittiest little thing that you don't want to play, or some fabulous player in the band thinks it's beneath him. No. Okay, so be it. It's beneath you, but that's what needs to happen. So you need to grab a hold of that type of leading and say, this is what we're going to do. And before you know it, they forget about it. After rehearsal, how much they hate it. It sounds good, and the artist is happy. We all know when the artist is happy, it trickles down everywhere else.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
How about correspondence? When you communication, nowadays with so many apps, I find it's a little frustrating at times for me when people are communicating to me on several different platforms, Instagram, Facebook. I would rather communication take place via phone or texting or voicemail and emails.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Now, are you talking about when you're on the road or in
business.
general?
Being on the road and just having fun is one thing, but for business, I find that it's best to do my business interaction with email and phone calls.
That seems to be the way it's going, and let's not forget about video calls as well.
Right.
It seems nowadays the convenience of texting and emailing is just another form of texting. Honestly, it's you're not speaking to somebody, and you can get yourself in a situation without ruffling any feathers.
Right.
Oh, did I call you at a bad time? You're changing the baby's diapers.
Exactly.
I got to call you back, and then 10 minutes later you forget that you even got the call because the baby's crying and is hungry, and I mean, let's go on and on and on about that.
Yeah.
That can be messy. So yeah, I think text and email is great. One thing I discovered, there's an app now that's really good called Master Tour. Droke knows about that. I'm sure you guys use it.
We use it. It's amazing.
That's fabulous. With Jeffrey's situation, we just do group texts.
Group text. Yep, that's right.
That's fine. One blast goes out. Everybody knows. Everybody responds. We even got to the point now where we respond with the instrument icon that we play.
That's right.
I started responding with just a guitar because I know my name is on it, right? And then before you know it, there's a snare drum, there's another guitar, there's a microphone, there's a keyboard.
It's funny how these apps brought us back down.
Well,
but some senses.
but it's quick. You don't have to sit there and type a sentence. Yes, I got it. I will see you at 4. Or microphone. Send. You know what I mean?
I usually do a little rock
Yeah, I saw that.
with
Yeah.
the guitar in the middle and then another rock and roll side.
I love it. I remember when that first started happening, cats would go, "Oh, I'm not an icon user. I want to type." I said, "Oh, well, fair enough. I'm getting it done with just an icon. So go over there and grumble in the corner."
It's funny because time to time I have people hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, and you know what? It's a shame, but I never get those messages because I'm not on there checking messages.
Right.
Right. So I do think in a business
email. But I would say, not to interrupt you, email and text.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think that's what I was fishing for. If I could push you for an answer, I don't know why I did that.
No. Everybody does email and text before anything else. Not everybody gets on. See, in the old days, it was like not everybody checks their emails.
Right.
But everybody checks their text because you get it right then and there. Beep, beep. Well, there you are.
Yeah.
What do you
want?
want?
What's your stance on responding to a gig request? How quickly? What's your time frame?
ASAP.
That's right.
If I might get something during the middle of a sound check. Mm-hmm. Well, I can, while they're getting a test checking the snare,
there you go.
I'll take that 30 seconds and respond.
There you go.
I made it a habit very early on. If I'm in front of my phone, okay, and they know I'm reading the text, and if I can sit there and type a response, I'll just do it.
That's right.
Number one, I won't forget about it.
That's right.
Number two, it comes right back to them.
That's it.
And that's carrying yourself.
This is protocol, man.
Yeah.
It's
Respond. Do not be aloof. Don't be aloof. Don't do that.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
Thank you. I needed it to come from somebody else's mouth other than mine.
Yeah.
So,
No,
I don't want to be the dead horse. People
Look,
hear from me all the time.
I will tell you, I get shit for responding immediately to text and being the first one at the airport.
That's right.
You know what? Feed me that shit.
Brother,
I'll take it.
if the flight's at 7, I leave the house at 4:30.
Oh yeah,
gosh.
and now it's turned in. Now it's turned in. Well, if Kevin's not here before the rest of us, we think something's wrong.
Something's wrong. That's right. The gate changed. The flight is delayed. Something happened.
Yeah. Where he should be here. He's always here 18 hours early. Where is he?
Dude, we're the same person. This is ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Shit, man. With status on the airlines, we fly American Airlines all the time. Not the plugged in, but everybody flies American. So, Admirals Club is my friend on these early flights. Shit, I go sit down, have breakfast, get online, check email, do my little do's and don'ts. I deal with people on the other side of the planet who are 8 to 10 hours ahead, so that's perfect time to reach out to them. Pale Eddie Guitars being one of them.
These are the little gig hacks that, are really useful and important.
Yeah, they are. You might not think, oh yeah, I'll call them later. And see that to me is a kiss of death because you'll fucking forget about it.
That's right.
I would forget about
That's
it.
right.
I'll take responsibility for that.
Favorite food?
My favorite food?
Yeah.
Right now, I have to say a really good veggie burger.
Favorite movie?
Oh, you're digging deep because I can't land on
Just
one.
one of many.
One of many. The documentary I just saw on Keith Richards.
Favorite TV show? One of many.
Man, I don't really watch network television anymore. I hate to say. So my favorite TV show would have to be 2.5 Men.
Favorite pastime other than music?
Cooking.
Favorite types of food to cook?
Lots of things green. Love
it. Favorite sport?
Favorite sport? Oh, golf.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
I can even watch that shit on TV, believe it or not.
Really? I find that ultra boring.
Well, I put it on and no sound.
While you're working, yeah.
When I'm just sitting there, I don't even pay attention. But
I noticed you have a bicycle.
Oh, yes, I'm a big cyclist.
So
yes.
you go out.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
So what's your average mileage that you rack up in one?
Well, Balboa Park, as you know, is just right down. I can ride to it.
Yeah.
And if you go around one time, it's about 10-ish miles. So a good day would be going around twice and then coming back. If I go around once, I could be back at the house in an hour.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's okay. Like for instance, you coming over today at a particular time, I have my morning to get all that shit out of the way.
There you go.
I even hit the music store this morning to buy some extra guitar stands for that and some other guitars in the house.
Nice.
So yeah, so you know, one of the great things about cycling is I could just put on my cycling gear, go out, and even if I only ride for a half hour, 45 minutes, it's still done. And I like, you know, I love the treadmill and the bike at the gym, but there's something about being out, and that park is great because you're out of traffic and it's
beautiful.
Yeah,
that's your piece.
I do a lot of thinking out there.
That's right.
Thinking of chord changes that when I come back, half the time I go, okay, wait a minute, I must have had an extra finger in my mind because I can't play that chord. You know, it's like, out of wait.
That's awesome. Kevin, this has been amazing.
Great, man. I'm so glad you came over, bro. Yeah. I don't even remember how it came together, but it came together because I just decided not to bail, just to hang on. It's going to get a little rough right now.
Right.
Turbulence.
No, I hate turbulence.
Yeah, but you get through it, right?
You get through it.
6 hours later, you're laying in bed in your hotel room and going, what the fuck? You know, I'm here.
Yeah.
Follow The Career Musician on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on the latest news and tips from the world's leading musicians.
Binge previous seasons of the Career Musician Podcast and subscribe for all new episodes.
Culminating a lifetime of experience, Nomad is the career musician. Stream the Career Musician Podcast, highlighting interviews with other industry professionals, providing insight and strategies for a sustainable career for the next generation of aspiring career musicians.
Download, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, I'm Kevin Chokan, and I'm a career musician. And you're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with my friend, my homie, Nomad.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad, yeah, I'm a nomad. Hush now, darling, you'll be fine. I'll be back this way.
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast, and I am thoroughly stoked to be an official member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Pantheon Podcast Network is the first of its kind as an all-music-based podcast collective. Please be sure to check us out at pantheonpodcast.com for more info.